Every body of water on Earth helps to support different ecosystems and is vital to the environment as a whole. Estuaries play a unique and important role as a nursery for many species of oysters, fish, and turtles, as well as being a safe haven for migratory birds. An estuary is where freshwater rivers meet the saltwater oceans. This environment is influenced by both, where it has tides and salt fluctuations, and freshwater cycling and sediment deposits. This combination allows for a high nutrient level and leads to estuaries being highly populated by humans and animal and plant species. Adult fish will travel into the estuaries from the ocean and lay and fertilize eggs because the estuaries supply a certain amount of protection that enables the newly hatched fish to grow and be prepared to enter the more dangerous ocean. In much the same way, shrimp will grow in the estuaries and float into the ocean when the tide goes out. Estuaries serve as protection and buffers against natural disasters, contain abundant amounts of natural resources, and have fertile areas that benefit farmers. The number one cause of estuarian depletion is human exploitation. In the 1950s, overfishing in estuaries, because of easy access to salmon and sturgeon, developed a still ongoing tragedy of the commons. The fish found in these types of areas are greatly desired by the public, and in effect, overfishing has created more problems other than the depletion of certain fish and shellfish. The manner in which the fishing and farming is done leads to a devastating destruction of the estuaries because through the exposure to boats and the pollution and waste released off the boats, the water becomes contaminated. Many species that live in the estuaries are extremely sensitive to slight chemical changes in the waters. Invasive species are also introduced through the carelessness of the fishermen. The species, like the oyster drills and Chinese mitten crabs, get introduced to the delicate environment and have no true predators. These species then take over the environment and either kill off or steal the sustenance of native species. Invasive species are also very difficult to control, and boat holes can be the manner in which the unwelcome critters travel to new destinations to thrive. According to an article in Futuri, a surge of nutrients from farm fertilizer, animal waste, water treatment discharge, and atmospheric deposition has led to the destruction of this specific ecosystem and the killing of oysters, shrimp, and other estuarine-dependent species. Pollution is always a problem, but with the overwhelming human population that chooses to live near estuaries, the problem increases. Factories generally do not control the chemical waste of their products, and the waste can be seen released into the environment. Industrial waste is not the only reason for the damage and depletion of estuaries. Other pollution is caused by fertilizers and animal waste that run off into these areas. The increase of nitrogen and phosphorus in the estuaries is called nutrient pollution. This can lead to an algae bloom that uses a lot of oxygen, and when it dies, it suffocates the bottom of the estuarine floor, where bacteria then eats the dead algae and utilizes all the spare oxygen in the water. This is known as a dead zone because the depletion of oxygen does not allow plants and animals to live in an environment that they can survive in. According to Rebecca Murphy, the head author of Chesapeake Bay Study, this hypoxia, though naturally occurring, has increased due to a lack of regulation of fertilizers released into the waters. The increase of dead zones in the Chesapeake Bay estuary, one of the largest estuaries in the world, is a growing concern because this estuary supports nearly 3,600 species of plants, fish, and other animals. Murphy also proved that the dead zones were caused by climate change as well. This change of wind, sea levels, and salinity, she stated, were the combined reasons for stratification to occur. Stratification is where the denser salt water drives underneath the less dense fresh water and creates a barrier where the oxygen cannot reach the marine animals on the bottom floor. An article in the Los Angeles Times accentuates the growing concern that climate change is drastically affecting estuaries. Author Frank Clifford reports that the Colorado River Delta, another estuary, is becoming depleted because of dry weather and an ongoing drought. Fishermen are left hungry because there are no fish. The hard winds and severe climate decreases the estuarine water levels enough to where the fish move elsewhere. Other LA Times articles emphasize the effect of humans on estuaries, with one describing the effect of encroaching commercialization in Los Ciertos wetlands, and the other giving insight into another aspect of pollution. Hector Tobar shows that litter clogs the flow of the estuaries and also kills the fish and various animals that live there. The depletion of estuaries is a worldwide problem and is not just present in North America. Japan Times shows the interesting view of estuaries as protectors of inland areas. Mangroves are a common sight in the estuaries of Yokoshima Island, but fisheries and deforestation has killed these trees. According to Gerard Taffé, Japan now realizes that if the islands had maintained these special saltwater-resistant trees and not destroyed them, the tsunamis would not have been so damaging. Mangroves act as a buffer against such massive waves, and without the presence of the mangroves' strong, intricate roots, the island eroded against the oncoming waves. Mangroves not only protect the shore, but according to the article in the Chicago Tribune, the mangroves provide a place for herons and other wading birds to find food and shelter. The mangroves on Sanibel Island, Florida, have the same function as those in Japan. Not only are they beautiful wildlife reserves, they protect and shelter as well. The Linvest Ocean Program states that 65% of the destruction of wetlands can be blamed on the humans, and the destruction was because of resource exploitation, habitat destruction, and pollution. Human population also greatly affects groundwater and is a growing concern because the contamination is widespread and difficult to control or get rid of. Groundwater is an important and oftentimes overlooked supply of drinking water. In just Texas alone, there are 9 major aquifers and 20 minor aquifers, and all have been exposed to a type of contamination. This information, provided by the Texas Environmental Almanac, is disturbing because of the government's failure to enact protocols and laws against such pollution of groundwater sources. Surface water is much more regulated, however. Many people are extremely dependent on the groundwater reserves. Farmers use this water to irrigate crops and water their livestock, but if it is contaminated, the water threatens their entire livelihood. The health hazards are not limited to the crops and animals. Humans drink and bathe in this contaminated water and can become sick. Another way in which humans become exposed to this contamination is through eating animals or plants that have used the bad water to survive. Although the Texas Environmental Almanac plainly says that groundwater contamination can be a natural occurrence through saline water from deep aquifers seeping into aquifers that provide water for humans, and other groundwater may have naturally high background levels of nitrates, metals, iron, sulfate, or chloride, all of which can give water an odd odor, color, or taste, the most alarming contamination is due to human pollutants. Environment Canada emphasizes that once groundwater is contaminated, it will be unstable for decades, and the contamination does not end there. It spreads to lakes and springs and then gets into the atmosphere, where the water cycle will dump the pollution elsewhere. The manner in which the groundwater becomes contaminated includes industrial plant waste, sewage leakage, agricultural runoff, mining, and underground pipes and tanks leaking. Industrial plants will emit waste that is not regulated, and before any laws were put in place, hazardous waste would be buried in storage containers that would eventually erode and leak. These chemicals and toxic waste will then seep into the ground until all of it comes in contact with an aquifer or other groundwater source. Landfills create a problem because the sewage seeps into the ground to mix with the groundwater. Landfills are everywhere, and older ones were not built with the environment in mind. The trash will continue to break down and release chemicals and other bad things into the environment. Farmers create some of their own issues when they put too much fertilizer on the crops growing. Some fertilizers are worse for the environment, and when it rains, the water will mix with the chemicals and nutrients found in the fertilizer to seep into the soil. France 24 states that the World Wildlife Fund is concerned with the levels of pesticides and nitrates in groundwater. The contamination is a global concern and should be addressed quickly. Mining and de-icing roads share a similar effect on groundwater. Both increase the salinity of the water and make it undrinkable. Mining uses superheated water injected into the earth to mine uranium or sulfur, while salt is placed on icy roads and drains off into the environment. The contamination is not only present in the United States, Canada, and France. China has also been dealing with similar problems and gives varying reports on the success of containing the pollution. In an article of China Daily, the author states that the Chinese government has placed controls on pollution of groundwater for the first time. The national plan provides money for 6 categories of regulation, survey, prevention, remediation, control, and monitoring the capacity for the water reserves to handle pollution. Another article in China Daily, however, contradicts this good news. The author shatters the facade of regulation and states that more than half of the groundwater dependent major cities failed to meet the standards for drinking water safety. This specific pollution has gotten out of control in the world, but the United States Groundwater Foundation presents several ideas that could potentially control this problem. Two main ways of ridding pollution from the water seem the most effective. Pumping out the contaminated water from the aquifers and cycling it back after removing the pollutants is an option, as is putting chemicals and influencing naturally occurring processes to rid the pollutants. We must remember that the solution to pollution is dilution. So, in order to make the water drinkable when it is contaminated, much more water is needed to be pumped in the underground reserves, and it develops into a less available option. The bigger problem with maintaining ecosystems is human interactions and carelessness. Estuaries and groundwater reserves are directly and indirectly affected by human-produced waste, chemicals, and pollutants. Although there are options to remedy these problems, the best remedy would be to stop them from happening altogether. This would require extreme government regulations and a budget that is not present in many countries. Estuarine depletion and groundwater contamination will continue until humans realize too late how important these two different types of water are to the environment and to the human population on Earth.